I stood near the altar in my emerald green bridesmaid dress, watching Camilla adjust the delicate lace of her gown one more time before the doors opened. She looked beautiful, radiant in a way that made my chest constrict. 3 months had passed since I lost Emma. 3 months since I woke up from anesthesia to find empty arms and a nurse who wouldn't meet my eyes. 3 months of learning to exist in a world that kept spinning, despite the fact that mine had stopped completely. "You okay?" Camilla whispered, reaching for my hand. Her touch grounded me, pulled me back from the edge of that dark place I kept falling into. "I'm fine," I lied, squeezing her fingers. "This is your day. I'm not going to ruin it by being sad." "You're not ruining anything, Liz. You being here means everything to me." The music began before I could respond, the familiar wedding march filling the chapel. Anthony stood at the front, beaming as he watched his bride approach. I took my place beside the other bridesmaids, forcing myself to smile, to be present for my best friend, even though every cell in my body wanted to be anywhere else. The estate was massive, one of those old Boston mansions with too many rooms and too much history. Anthony's family had money, the kind that bought mansions in exclusive suburbs and invited people who made the news for reasons that were never entirely legal. I'd met some of them during the rehearsal dinner the night before. Polite smiles, careful questions, eyes that assessed and cataloged every detail. Thunder rumbled outside as the officiant began the ceremony. Through the tall windows, I could see the storm building, dark clouds rolling in fast. The weather matched my mood perfectly. That's when I heard it. A baby crying. Not the polite fussing that babies sometimes do during ceremonies. This was full-throated screaming, the kind that made everyone in the chapel turn and look. Through the side entrance came a man I recognized from the rehearsal dinner, though we hadn't been introduced. Franco Ricchetti. Even I knew that name, and I didn't follow Boston's criminal underworld. He carried a baby girl, maybe 7 or 8 months old, her face red from crying. A nanny followed him, looking harried and exhausted. The baby's screams echoed off the vaulted ceiling, drowning out the officiant's words. Franco tried bouncing her, swaying side to side, rubbing her back. Nothing worked. The nanny took her, attempted a bottle, tried a pacifier. The baby just cried harder, her tiny fists clenched, body rigid with distress. People were starting to murmur. Camilla glanced back at me, concern etched on her face. The officiant paused, clearly unsure whether to continue or wait. Anthony's mother shot Franco a look that could have frozen water. I watched the baby's face contort with each cry and felt something crack open inside my chest. That sound, that desperate wailing, it triggered every maternal instinct I'd been trying to bury since Emma died. My body responded before my mind could stop it. My breasts ached. My arms felt empty. My heart pounded against my ribs. The nanny was whispering urgently to Franco, who shook his head, jaw tight. He wasn't angry, I realized. He was scared. This powerful man who probably terrified most people he met looked absolutely terrified of his own daughter's tears. I moved without thinking. Stepped down from my place beside Camilla. Walked down the aisle toward the chaos. Heads turned. Whispers followed. I didn't care. "May I?" I asked when I reached Franco. He stared at me, dark brown eyes assessing. Up close, he was even more intimidating than I'd expected. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that made the air feel thicker, but there were shadows under his eyes, tension in the set of his shoulders, exhaustion written in every line of his face. "You're the maid of honor," he said, voice low and rough. "Alyssa," I corrected. "And yes. May I try?" He glanced at his daughter, at the nanny who shrugged helplessly, then back at me. Something in his expression shifted, desperation overriding caution. He handed me the baby. Sophia was heavier than Emma had been, warmer, more solid. The weight of her in my arms felt like coming home and breaking apart simultaneously. She screamed directly into my ear, her little body trembling with the force of her cries. I moved on instinct, walking toward a small alcove off to the side of the chapel, away from the stares and whispers, away from the judgment I could feel radiating from some of the guests. I sat down on a cushioned bench, cradling Sophia against my chest. "Shh," I murmured, rocking gently. I know it's hard. She didn't stop crying, but the pitch changed slightly. I could feel her exhaustion, the way her body shook. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a baby who needed something she hadn't been getting. My dress had buttons down the front. I'd chosen it specifically because it reminded me of the nursing-friendly clothes I'd bought and never got to use. My fingers moved automatically, undoing the top few buttons. I hesitated for just a moment, thinking about what I was about to do, about how completely inappropriate it was. Then Sophia's cries hit a particularly desperate note, and I stopped thinking altogether. I guided her to my breast, half expecting nothing to happen, but my body, still confused about why there was no baby to feed, responded immediately. Sophia latched on, her cries cutting off so abruptly that the silence felt deafening. I looked down at her tiny face, at her eyes already starting to drift closed as she fed. Tears ran down my cheeks, hot and unstoppable. This wasn't my baby. This wasn't Emma. But for just a moment, holding this child, feeling her relax against me, something inside me loosened. Thank you. I looked up to find Franco standing in the alcove's entrance. I hadn't heard him approach. His eyes weren't on me, though. They were on his daughter, and the expression on his face made my throat tight. She's hungry, I said quietly. How long has she been refusing bottles? Weeks? Maybe longer? He ran a hand through his dark hair, messing up the careful styling. 3 nannies have quit. The pediatrician says she's healthy, that some babies are just difficult. I thought bringing her to the wedding might help. Different environment, but she's not difficult, I interrupted. She's grieving. Franco's head snapped up, his gaze locking onto mine. What? Her mother. She died in childbirth, right? I'd overheard someone mention it at the rehearsal dinner. Whispered gossip about Franco Ricchetti's wife dying and leaving him alone with an infant. He nodded slowly, wary. Sophia never got to breastfeed. Never had that connection with her mother. And now she's being passed between nannies, fed from bottles, never finding the comfort that babies are hardwired to need. I looked down at Sophia, who was still nursing peacefully. She's not difficult. She's desperate. Franco moved closer, sat down on the bench beside me. I could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne mixed with something else. Stress and exhaustion and fear. The doctors never said. Most doctors don't think about infant trauma. They look for physical problems, not emotional ones. I stroked Sophia's soft black hair, so much like her father's. But babies know. They know when something's wrong, when someone's missing. They just can't tell us in words. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft sounds of Sophia feeding and the muffled music from the ceremony, which had apparently resumed without us. You lost a baby, Franco said. Not a question. I stiffened. How did you know? Your body. The way you moved. The way you knew exactly what to do. His voice gentled slightly. And the way you're crying. I hadn't realized I was still crying. I wiped at my cheeks with one hand, trying to pull myself together. 3 months ago, she was born too early. Didn't survive. I'm sorry. The simple words, spoken with genuine feeling, nearly undid me completely. I focused on Sophia instead, on the miracle of this baby I didn't know, finding comfort from a body that had been useless to the daughter I'd lost. Why are you doing this? Franco asked. You don't know us. You could have stayed up there, let her cry, finished being in your friend's wedding. I couldn't, I admitted. I heard her crying, and it was like my body moved on its own. Like some part of me that's been shut down since Emma died suddenly woke up. Sophia had stopped feeding, her eyes closed, her breathing deep and even. Sleep had claimed her so quickly, it was almost comical. I carefully shifted her to my shoulder, buttoning my dress back up with one hand. Franco watched every movement, with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. How long can you stay? He asked. I blinked at him. What? At the reception. After. How long before you need to leave? Confusion must have shown on my face because he continued, speaking quickly, urgently. Sophia needs you. Not for a few minutes. Not just right now. She needs someone who understands what she's missing, who can give her what I can't. He paused. jaw working like the words were difficult. I need you. To help her. To help me figure out how to be what she needs. I started, then stopped. What was I going to say? That I didn't know him? That this was crazy? That you couldn't just ask strangers to breastfeed your baby? All of that was true. All of that was rational and sensible and exactly what I should be thinking. But when I looked down at Sophia, peaceful for probably the first time in weeks, all those rational thoughts evaporated. I have clients, I said instead. I'm a child psychologist. I have sessions scheduled, people depending on me. I'll pay you whatever you're making. Double it. Franco's voice was steady, but his eyes were desperate. Please, just for a few weeks, until we can find a better solution, until she's stable. I should have said no. Should have handed Sophia back, walked away, returned to my normal life where I helped other people's children, and tried not to think about my own loss. Instead, I heard myself say, 2 weeks. That's all I can promise. Franco's exhale was pure relief. 2 weeks. Thank you. Music swelled from the chapel, signaling the end of the ceremony. Through the alcove's entrance, I could see people starting to move, heading toward the reception hall. Camilla would be looking for me, wondering where I'd disappeared to. But I stayed where I was, holding this sleeping baby, having just agreed to something that would change everything. The reception hall glowed with candlelight and laughter, but I stayed in the alcove with Sophia sleeping against my chest. Franco stood nearby, silent, his attention fixed on his daughter with an intensity that bordered on disbelief. This was probably the longest stretch of peace she'd had in weeks, maybe since birth. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, quick and purposeful. Camilla appeared in the doorway, still glowing from her ceremony, though concern creased her forehead. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Her eyes moved from me to Franco to the sleeping baby in my arms. Is everything okay? I'm sorry, I said quickly. I know I should have stayed, but she wouldn't stop crying and don't apologize. Camilla moved closer, her expression softening as she looked at Sophia. Anthony's mother explained who Mr. Richetti is. She said his daughter has been struggling since his wife passed. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That was kind of you to help. Franco shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with being discussed like he wasn't standing right there. Your friend saved my daughter from a complete meltdown. I'm grateful. Alyssa has always been good with children, Camilla said, though her eyes held questions she wasn't asking. Questions about how exactly I'd gotten Sophia to calm down, about what I was doing here instead of at her wedding reception, about whether I was okay. Go back to your guests, I told her. I'll be there in a few minutes. I just need to make sure she's really asleep first. Camilla hesitated, then reached out to squeeze my free hand. Find me later. We need to talk. After she left, Franco finally spoke. She's protective of you. We've been friends since college. She saw me through. I trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence. Not wanting to talk about Emma with this man I barely knew. Through losing your daughter. Franco finished for me anyway. His voice held no judgment, just acknowledgement of a fact. That's why she's worried. She thinks I'm taking advantage of your grief. Are you? The question hung in the air between us, sharp and necessary. Franco met my gaze directly, his dark brown eyes serious. Maybe. I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair again, a gesture I was starting to recognize as a tell when he was stressed. All I know is that Sophia hasn't slept this peacefully since Gabriella died. That 3 trained nannies couldn't do what you just did. That I've been watching my daughter suffer for 8 months and feeling completely helpless to fix it. Sophia stirred slightly, making a small sound in her sleep. I adjusted my hold on her, rocking gently. Tell me about the nannies. What happened with them? The first one lasted 2 months. She was experienced, had great references, but Sophia screamed whenever she tried to feed her. Eventually, she just couldn't handle it anymore. Franco leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. The second one made it 3 weeks. Same problem. The third quit after 10 days. And the one who came with you tonight? Agency temp. 5th or 6th one we've cycled through in the past month. None of them stay longer than a few days. His jaw clenched. I thought maybe I was the problem, that Sophia could sense my fear, my guilt, my complete inability to be what she needs, but watching her with you. It's not about you, I said gently. It's about what she lost before she could even understand she had it. Babies are born expecting certain things. Skin contact, a mother's heartbeat, the comfort of nursing. When those things are suddenly gone, it creates a trauma response. She's 7 months old. How can she be traumatized by something she never had? Because her body remembers. Because she was inside Gabriella for 9 months, hearing her heartbeat, feeling her movements, preparing for a world where that presence would continue. Then suddenly it didn't. I looked down at Sophia's peaceful face. She's not being difficult. She's grieving. Franco was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. The doctors never said that. They checked her for reflux, allergies, developmental issues. They said some babies are just fussy, that she'd outgrow it. Some doctors don't understand trauma, especially in infants. They look for medical problems they can fix with medicine or tests. But this isn't something you can cure with a prescription. Can you fix it? The vulnerability in his question caught me off guard. This man, who I knew from whispered conversations at the rehearsal dinner, controlled significant criminal operations in Boston, sounded lost. I don't know, I admitted, but I can try. For 2 weeks. Like we agreed. 2 weeks. He nodded slowly. What would that look like? What would you need? The question forced me to actually think through what I'd just agreed to. I'd been running on pure instinct, responding to a crying baby, and my own desperate need to hold a child again. But Franco was asking for logistics, for a plan. I'd need to be with her consistently, I said, thinking out loud. Not just for feedings, but throughout the day. Babies thrive on routine, on knowing what to expect. If I'm going to help her feel secure, I can't just drop in occasionally. Move into my penthouse. Not a question, a statement. I have an apartment, clients, a life. Bring what you need from your apartment. Work remotely if you have to. I'll pay for whatever arrangements need to be made. Franco pushed off the doorframe, moving closer. I know it's asking a lot. I know you don't know me. Don't have any reason to trust me. But Sophia needs this. She needs you. I wanted to say no. Should have said no. This was beyond unconventional, bordering on completely inappropriate. Moving into the home of a crime boss I'd met 20 minutes ago to nurse his infant daughter. My therapist would have a field day with the boundary violations alone. But when I looked at Sophia, sleeping so peacefully after months of distress, I couldn't form the words to refuse. I need to talk to Camilla first, I said finally. She's my emergency contact, the person who knows where I am. If I'm going to do this, she needs to know. Understood. What else? I'll need access to my files from home. Patient records, session notes. I have 3 clients I see weekly via video call. I can't just abandon them. Give me your address. I'll have someone pack whatever you need and bring it to the penthouse by tomorrow morning. At my alarmed expression, he added, Professional movers, not my guys. They won't go through your things, just pack what you tell them to. This is insane, I muttered, more to myself than to him. Probably. Franco agreed. But you haven't said no. Because I couldn't. Because holding this baby felt like breathing after drowning. Because some part of me that had been dead since Emma's birth was suddenly, painfully alive again. 2 weeks. I repeated, making it clear this was a boundary, not a negotiation. After that, we reassess. And if at any point this isn't working, I leave. No arguments, no complications. Agreed. Sophia chose that moment to wake up, her eyes opening slowly. She looked at me with that unfocused infant gaze. Then her face crumpled, building toward another cry. I shifted her automatically, unthinking, and she found what she was seeking, latching on again with the desperation of someone who'd been denied too long. Franco watched us, and something in his expression made my throat tight. Not attraction exactly, though he was undeniably handsome. Something deeper, more complicated. Recognition, maybe, of 2 people bound by grief, finding unexpected connection through a child who needed them both. I should get back to the reception, I said, after Sophia finished and dozed off again. Camilla's going to worry if I disappear completely. Keep her with you for now. Franco carefully extracted a business card from his wallet. My number. Text me when you're ready to leave. I'll have my driver take you home, then to the penthouse tomorrow morning. I can take an Uber. Not with my daughter, you can't. The possessiveness in his voice should have been off-putting. Instead, it felt like safety, like someone finally taking responsibility instead of leaving me to handle everything alone. I took the card, slipping it into the small pocket of my dress. Tomorrow morning, then. 9 o'clock? 8. Sophia usually wakes around 6. Starts getting fussy by 7. Better if you're there for the morning feeding. 8. I agreed, wondering what I was getting myself into. Franco reached out slowly, giving me time to pull back, and gently stroked his daughter's hair. The gesture was so tender, so at odds with everything I knew about him, that something in my chest cracked open a little wider. Thank you, he said quietly. I know you don't owe us anything, but thank you. I managed a nod, not trusting my voice. Back at the reception, I found Camilla immediately. She pulled me into a quiet corner, away from the celebration, and waited. I'm going to help him, I said before she could ask. Just for 2 weeks. His daughter needs someone who understands infant trauma, and I can't just walk away from that. Alice, he's not some regular client. Do you know who Franco Ricchetti is? What he does? I know. I'd Googled his name on my phone while Sophia slept. The articles were carefully worded, all allegedly and suspected, but the message was clear. But his daughter is innocent. She didn't choose her father's profession. And what about you? You're barely holding yourself together after Emma. Is taking care of another woman's baby really going to help? The question hit like a physical blow. I don't know, I whispered. But I have to try. When I'm holding Sophia, when she's nursing and finally peaceful, it's like I can breathe again for the first time in 3 months. Camilla's expression softened, though worry still creased her features. Promise me you'll check in every day. Text, call, something. So I know you're okay. I promise. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately and I'm coming to get you. Deal. She pulled me into a hug, careful of the sleeping baby between us. I love you. Please be careful. I love you too. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I stayed at the reception long enough to not be rude, making conversation while Sophia slept in my arms. People asked questions I deflected, compliments I barely registered. My mind was already somewhere else, planning for tomorrow, for 2 weeks of navigating life with a grieving infant and her dangerous father. Around 10 o'clock, I texted Franco that I was ready to leave. His response came within seconds. Driver is waiting at the front entrance, black sedan. Anthony approached as I headed out, his expression unreadable. Mr. Ricchetti is a family friend, he said carefully, but he's also not someone you want to be indebted to. I'm helping his daughter, not joining his organization. With men like Franco, the line between those things can blur quickly. He paused, choosing his words. Camilla told me what you're doing. I get it, I do. But be smart about this, Alyssa. Keep boundaries. I will. The sedan was exactly where Franco said it would be, driver holding the door open. I climbed in with Sophia, who was starting to stir again. The drive to my apartment was short, but she woke fully halfway through. Immediately searching for comfort I was learning to provide without thinking. In my small studio apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built since Emma's death, the reality of what I'd agreed to finally hit me. 2 weeks. Living with a stranger and his infant daughter, nursing a baby who wasn't mine, stepping into a world that had nothing to do with psychology degrees or normal grief counseling. Sophia finished feeding and looked up at me with those dark eyes so much like her father's. She made a small sound, not quite a coo, but close. And my heart twisted. 2 weeks. I could do 2 weeks. And then I'd walk away, return to my regular life, and pretend this strange interlude never happened. Except even as I thought it, I knew it was a lie. The moving company arrived at 7:30 in the morning, exactly when Franco said they would. I'd spent the previous evening packing essentials while Sophia slept in my arms, scribbling lists of what I'd need for 2 weeks away from my life. Clothes, laptop, client files stored on an encrypted external drive, Toiletries, the worn copy of developmental psychology textbooks I still reference despite having finished my doctorate 3 years ago. The movers were efficient and professional. 2 women in company uniforms who didn't ask questions about why I was moving into a stranger's home. They simply loaded boxes into their van, while I made final calls to reschedule appointments. "Hi, Mrs. Peterson." "Yes, I'm so sorry about the short notice. A family emergency came up and I need to postpone our session until next Wednesday." Pause. "No, everyone's fine. Just unexpected complications that need my attention." Another pause, longer this time. "Thank you for understanding. I'll send you a video link for our makeup session." 3 more calls like that, each one making me feel like a fraud. Family emergency wasn't technically a lie, just not my family. But what was I supposed to say? I agreed to nurse a Mafia boss's daughter because holding a baby helps my grief. Camilla texted as I locked my apartment door for what would be 2 weeks. "Are you really doing this?" "Yes. I'll text you when I get there. Be safe. I love you." "Love you too." Franco's driver was waiting downstairs in the same black sedan from last night. The interior still smelled like expensive leather, but this time Sophia was already in a car seat, watching me with those serious dark eyes as I slid in beside her. "Good morning, Miss Turner," the driver said. His voice was polite, professional, completely neutral. "Mr. Ricchetti is waiting at the penthouse. The drive should take about 20 minutes. Downtown Boston's financial district was just waking up, early commuters flooding the streets with purpose. The penthouse turned out to be in one of those glass towers that reflected the morning sun like a beacon, all sharp angles and modern architecture that screamed money in a way my modest studio never could. Security in the lobby was tight. 2 guards, metal detectors, a desk where I had to sign in and provide identification. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. Every detail reinforced what I already knew. Franco Ricchetti was someone who needed protection from threats I couldn't begin to imagine. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no buffer between public and private space. Franco stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that I couldn't quite follow. He raised one hand in acknowledgement when he saw us, then finished his conversation. "Capisco. Gestiscilo tu. Richiamami se ci sono problemi." I didn't catch every word, but his tone made it clear. Handle it. Call him if there were problems. He ended the call and pocketed the phone, attention shifting fully to Sophia and me. "You came." I said I would. People say a lot of things they don't mean. He crossed the space between us, movements fluid despite his size. Up close in natural light, I could see the exhaustion carved into his features more clearly than at the wedding. Dark circles under his eyes, tension in his jaw, the kind of weariness that came from months without adequate sleep. "Thank you for being someone who keeps her word." Sophia started fussing, recognizing her father, but also searching for what she'd found with me the night before. I lifted her from the car seat, and she immediately began rooting against my chest. "There's a room set up for you," Franco said, gesturing toward a hallway, next to Sophia's nursery. I had them bring a comfortable chair for feeding, extra pillows, whatever the lactation consultant suggested might help. "You called a lactation consultant?" "Last night, after you left. She couldn't come on such short notice, but she gave me a list of things that might make you more comfortable." He ran a hand through his hair, that now familiar gesture of stress. "I don't know what I'm doing here with any of this. I'm just trying not to make it worse." The vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. This man controlled criminal operations across Boston, yet he was completely lost when it came to caring for his infant daughter. "Show me the room," I said quietly. The penthouse was enormous, modern and minimalist, with an edge of warmth I hadn't expected. The room Franco led me to was spacious, painted in soft gray with cream accents. A large window overlooked the city, curtains already drawn to filter the morning light. The promised chair sat near the window, a glider with ottoman, cushioned and inviting. A small bassinet stood ready in case Sophia needed to sleep near me during the day. "The bathroom is through there," Franco indicated a door. "Fully stocked. If you need anything else, just ask." Sophia's fussing escalated to crying. I sat down in the glider, already reaching for the buttons on my blouse. Franco turned away immediately, giving me privacy I hadn't asked for but appreciated nonetheless. "I'll make coffee," he said, heading for the door. "Unless you don't drink coffee?" "I drink coffee. Thank you." He left, closing the door behind him. I settled Sophia against me, feeling the now familiar tug as she latched on. Her crying stopped instantly, replaced by the soft sounds of nursing. My body responded automatically, milk flowing, muscles relaxing into a rhythm that felt both foreign and completely natural. The room was quiet, except for Sophia's small noises and the distant sounds of the city beyond the window. I let my head fall back against the chair, eyes closing, allowing myself this moment of peace before facing whatever the next 2 weeks would bring. A knock at the door made me open my eyes. "Come in." Franco entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee, steam rising in lazy curls. He set one on the small table beside the chair, then stepped back, maintaining careful distance. "How long does she usually nurse?" he asked. "Depends. 20 minutes, sometimes longer. She's making up for months of not getting this." I adjusted my hold on Sophia slightly. "Has she been eating solid foods at all?" "The nannies tried. She'd take a few bites, then refuse everything else. The pediatrician said not to worry as long as she was getting formula, but..." He trailed off, jaw clenching. "But she wasn't really getting formula either." "No. Maybe 4 or 5 ounces a day when she should be getting 30. She's underweight for her age, behind on all the growth charts. They wanted to do tests, check for disorders. But I kept thinking maybe she just needed time." I looked down at Sophia, who was nursing contentedly, her small hand curled against my breast. "She's going to gain weight now. We'll introduce solids gradually, follow her lead, but the most important thing is establishing this connection, letting her feel secure." Franco nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "I should have known, should have understood what she needed instead of just hiring more nannies and hoping one of them would figure it out. You didn't know because no one told you. Doctors look for medical problems. Nannies follow standard procedures. Nobody thought to consider that she was traumatized by losing Gabriella. You did, within minutes of holding her, because I understand that kind of loss." The words came out rougher than intended. "Because I know what it feels like to have your body prepared for something that never happens." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared grief settling between us like a physical presence. Then Franco cleared his throat, shifting to more practical matters. "I have meetings today. 3 of them, all essential. Marco and Vincent will be here. They're my most trusted men, completely vetted. If you need anything while I'm gone, ask them." "How long will you be out?" 4 hours, maybe 5. I'll try to be back for her afternoon feeding if that's okay. This is your home, Franco. You don't need my permission to be here, but she's more comfortable with you. I don't want to disrupt whatever routine you establish." He paused. "There's food in the kitchen, fully stocked. Cook whatever you want, order delivery, whatever works. My housekeeper comes Tuesdays and Fridays, but I canceled this week to give you privacy. You've thought of everything." "I'm trying to." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked back at me. "I have to take this. Will you be okay?" "We'll be fine." He left, voice already shifting to business mode as he answered the call. I heard fragments of conversation in Italian as he moved deeper into the penthouse. Words I couldn't quite catch, but tone I understood perfectly. This was Franco Ricchetti, the boss, not Franco Ricchetti, the exhausted father. Sophia finished nursing and immediately fell asleep, her small body going limp with satisfaction. I held her for a while longer, unwilling to put her down, needing this connection as much as she did. Through the window, Boston spread out below us, people rushing to jobs and lives that had nothing to do with the strange situation I'd found myself in. My phone buzzed with a text from Camilla. "Did you make it okay?" "Yes, safe and sound. The penthouse is huge. Text me every few hours." "I'm serious about this, Alice. I will, promise." I spent the morning exploring the space Franco had given me, unpacking the boxes the movers had delivered. My clothes looked shabby hanging in the walk-in closet next to empty space meant for someone with a more extensive wardrobe. The bathroom was marble and chrome, larger than my entire studio's bathroom, with a shower that had more settings than I knew what to do with. Sophia woke around 11, ready for another feeding and a diaper change. I found the nursery across the hall, A room decorated in soft blues and whites with every possible baby item money could buy. Diapers, wipes, clothes in every size, toys she was still too young for but would grow into. A changing table with safety straps, a crib with breathable mesh sides, a rocking chair similar to the one in my room. Everything except the one thing she'd needed most. Someone to hold her and make her feel safe. I changed her diaper while she watched me with those serious eyes, then spent time on the floor with her, letting her practice sitting up with support. At 7 months, she should have been sitting independently, but I could see she was behind developmentally, probably from the months of distress and inadequate feeding. "We're going to catch you up," I told her, positioning cushions around her for support. "You're going to be just fine, sweet girl." And Marco appeared in the doorway, a large man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and watchful eyes. "Miss Turner? I'm making lunch. Do you have any dietary restrictions?" "No, I eat pretty much anything, thank you." "Chicken parm okay?" "It's Sophia's father's favorite, but I can make something else if you prefer." "That sounds perfect." He lingered for a moment, watching Sophia attempt to grab a soft toy I'd placed in front of her. "She seems calmer today. She's feeling more secure. It'll take time, but she'll get there." Mr. Ricchetti was up all night researching infant attachment. I've worked for him for 8 years, never seen him so focused on something outside of business. Marco's expression softened slightly. "What you're doing for them, it matters." After he left, I settled into a routine that felt almost normal, feeding Sophia, playing with her, responding to work emails during her naps. I had a video session with one of my clients at 2 o'clock, a teenager dealing with anxiety whose mother had died 2 years earlier. We talked about grief, about moving forward while still honoring loss, about finding meaning after trauma. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was giving advice I hadn't fully figured out how to follow myself. Franco returned around 4, looking worn but less tense than when he'd left. He found us in the living room, Sophia on her stomach on a playmat while I encouraged her to push up on her arms. "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Good. She's eating well, sleeping better. We did some tummy time, practiced sitting. She's strong, just needs consistency." He knelt down beside us, reaching out to stroke Sophia's back. She turned her head toward him, made a small sound that might have been recognition or might have been gas. "And you?" he asked, eyes shifting to meet mine. "How are you holding up?" The question surprised me. Most people asked about the baby, about whether the arrangement was working, about logistics and schedules. Nobody asked about me. "I'm okay. This is easier than I expected, actually. Being useful, having a purpose again. It helps. You had a video session earlier. I heard you talking when I came in. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. It's your home. You weren't eavesdropping. Still, I want you to feel like you have privacy here. Like this is your space too for however long you stay." Sophia chose that moment to spit up slightly. Nothing major, but enough to require a change of clothes for both of us. Franco moved automatically, grabbing a burp cloth from the nearby basket, helping me clean her up with a competence I hadn't expected. "You're getting better at this," I observed. "I've been watching videos, reading articles, trying to understand what I should have known months ago." He picked up Sophia carefully, holding her against his shoulder with more confidence than at the wedding. "Thank you for being patient with me. You're learning. That's what matters." We worked together to get Sophia cleaned up and into fresh clothes, a surprisingly domestic scene that felt both surreal and completely natural. This was temporary, I reminded myself. 2 weeks to stabilize Sophia, then I'd return to my life, and Franco would hire another nanny. Someone permanent, someone professional, someone who wasn't using his daughter to fill a void left by her own loss. But as Sophia curled against my chest for her evening feeding, as Franco sat nearby reviewing paperwork, but glancing up periodically to watch us, I couldn't quite shake the feeling that 2 weeks might not be as temporary as either of us intended. 2 weeks became 3, without either of us acknowledging the shift. I stopped mentioning leaving, Franco stopped asking when I planned to go, and Sophia continued to thrive in ways that made both of us reluctant to disrupt her progress. The routine we'd established felt natural now, almost comfortable. Franco adjusted his schedule around Sophia's feedings, attending morning meetings from home via video conference while I handled the first feeding of the day. He'd sit nearby with his laptop, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read while conducting business in rapid Italian that I was starting to understand better. Hai visto I numeri del mese scorso? He'd ask his associates, but his eyes would track Sophia's movements, the way she relaxed against me, the soft sounds she made while nursing. I'd started incorporating more developmental activities into our days. Tummy time on colorful mats, simple games with textured toys, reading board books in voices that made Sophia's eyes widen with interest. She was gaining weight steadily, her pediatrician amazed at the transformation from the underweight infant who'd been failing to thrive just weeks ago. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, Dr. Sanders had said during Sophia's 3-week checkup. She's gained almost 2 pounds. Her muscle tone is improving, and she's hitting milestones I honestly didn't think we'd see for months. Franco had been there for that appointment, sitting in the too small chair meant for parents, listening to every word with an intensity that made the doctor pause mid-sentence. "You're her father?" Dr. Sanders had asked, though she clearly already knew the answer. "Yes, and Miss Turner is helping us," Franco said simply, offering no further explanation. The doctor's eyes had moved between us, questions clearly forming, but she'd simply nodded and returned her attention to Sophia. That evening, Franco cooked dinner. It was becoming a pattern, him taking over the kitchen while I settled Sophia for her evening feeding, the scent of garlic and herbs filling the penthouse. Tonight, it was risotto, creamy and perfectly seasoned, served with a simple salad and crusty bread. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" I asked, watching him plate the food with practiced ease. "My mother. She insisted all her children know their way around a kitchen, said it was shameful for an Italian not to be able to feed themselves properly." He set a plate in front of me, then took the seat across. "She died when I was 16. Car accident. After that, cooking became a way to remember her. It was the most personal information he'd shared about his family. Usually our conversations stayed surface level, or focused entirely on Sophia. This felt different, like crossing into territory we'd both been avoiding. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Losing a parent that young must have been devastating. It was. My father shut down completely afterward, threw himself into the business. My older brother Antonio stepped up, tried to fill the void, but it wasn't the same. He took a bite of risotto, chewed thoughtfully. "That's when I learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when everything falls apart." The words hung between us, weighted with meaning I wasn't sure how to interpret. Was he talking about his past or making a point about our present situation? "Tell me about Emma," he said, changing the subject, but somehow making it more intimate. "What was she like?" My throat tightened. Nobody asked about Emma. Camila tried occasionally, but most people treated my daughter like a topic to avoid, a source of pain better left unmentioned. She was tiny, 4 pounds, 3 ounces, born at 32 weeks because my stress levels were too high and my body couldn't sustain the pregnancy. I set down my fork, appetite fading. She had dark hair like her father's, 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes. The nurses said she looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. "You didn't get to hold her." "No. I was unconscious from the emergency C-section. By the time I woke up, they'd already taken her to the morgue. Hospital policy, they said. I never got to say goodbye, never got to tell her I loved her, that I would have done anything to keep her safe." Franco reached across the table, covering my hand with his. The gesture was simple but grounding, pulling me back from the edge of grief that still threatened to swallow me whole. "She knew," he said firmly. "Babies know when they're loved even if they can't stay." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I see the way Sophia responds to you, the way she relaxes when you hold her, like she's finally found what she was searching for. That doesn't come from technique or training. It comes from genuine care, from love given freely." His thumb stroked across my knuckles. "Emma felt that from you. I'm certain of it." Tears spilled over before I could stop them. Franco stood, moving around the table to pull me into his arms. I buried my face against his chest, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with garlic and rosemary, letting myself break apart in a way I hadn't since the hospital. "I should have protected her better," I choked out. "Should have left him sooner, should have known the stress was too much. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time." That's all any of us can do. We stayed like that for a long time. Franco holding me while I cried for the daughter I'd lost and the future that had been stolen from both of us. When I finally pulled back, his shirt was damp with my tears, and his eyes held an emotion I couldn't quite name. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For asking about her. For not treating her like a taboo subject. She was your daughter. She deserves to be remembered." Later that night, after Sophia was asleep in her crib and I'd retreated to my room, I found myself thinking about Franco's words. About family being the people who show up when everything falls apart. About how this strange arrangement had somehow become more than a transaction, more than temporary help for a struggling father. My phone buzzed with a text from Camilla. "Haven't heard from you in 2 days. Getting worried." Guilt washed through me. I'd been so absorbed in the routine with Franco and Sophia that I'd let my promise to check in regularly slide. "Sorry, everything's fine. Just busy." Busy or avoiding? I stared at the question, unsure how to answer. Was I avoiding? Maybe. Talking to Camilla meant acknowledging that this situation had an expiration date, that eventually I'd need to leave and return to my real life. As long as I stayed in this bubble, I could pretend that caring for Sophia was my job, my purpose, my future. "Both, probably," I typed back honestly. "Want to meet for coffee tomorrow? I miss you. I'll have to bring Sophia." Bring her. I want to meet the baby who's stolen my best friend. We arranged to meet at a cafe near the penthouse the following afternoon. Franco agreed immediately when I asked if he'd be comfortable with Sophia leaving the apartment. "She needs to experience the world beyond these walls," he said. "And you need time with your friend. Take as long as you want." The next day, I dressed Sophia in a soft pink outfit that Franco had bought but she'd never worn, strapped her into the expensive stroller that had been gathering dust in the nursery, and headed out with Marco, following at a discreet distance. Franco had insisted on security, a compromise I'd accepted after pointing out that constant bodyguards would make normal outings impossible. Camilla was already waiting when I arrived, her face lighting up when she saw us. She hugged me tightly, then immediately knelt beside the stroller to examine Sophia. "Oh my God, Alice. She's beautiful. She's doing so much better. Gaining weight, hitting milestones, actually sleeping through the night sometimes." We settled at a corner table, Sophia content in my arms, and I felt the weight of Camilla's scrutiny. "You look different," she said finally. "Happier maybe. Or at least less haunted. Taking care of her helps. Gives me purpose." "And her father? How's that situation?" I chose my words carefully. "Franco is complicated. He's trying to be a good father despite having no real template for what that looks like. He's protective, sometimes overbearing, but his intentions seem genuine. Seem genuine or are genuine? I'm not sure there's a difference when it comes to him. Everything is layered with his world, his responsibilities, his need to control situations. But with Sophia, with me, I see him trying to be different." Camilla leaned back, coffee cup cradled in her hands. "You're falling for him." "What? No, that's not—" "Alyssa, I've known you for 8 years. I can tell when you're developing feelings for someone. The way you talk about him, the way your whole face softens when you mention his name. You're falling for him." I wanted to deny it, to insist that our relationship was purely professional, focused entirely on Sophia's well-being. But sitting here with my best friend who knew me too well to accept lies, I couldn't form the words. "It doesn't matter what I feel," I said instead. "This is temporary. Once Sophia is stable, I'll go back to my life and he'll hire someone permanent. Have you discussed that recently? Confirm that you're still planning to leave?" "No. Alice, I know. I'm avoiding the conversation because I don't want to hear the answer. If he says it's time for me to go, then I have to leave her. Leave them. And I'm not ready for that." Sophia chose that moment to start fussing, searching for what she now expected from me. I shifted her discreetly, grateful for the cover of the blanket I'd brought, and let her latch on. The familiar tug, the immediate calm that washed over her. It grounded me in a way nothing else could. "You've built a family with them," Camilla observed quietly, "whether you meant to or not. A family that isn't really mine." I'm the nanny who happens to breastfeed his daughter. Nothing more. Does Franco see it that way? I thought about the way he watched us during feedings, the personal stories he'd started sharing, the casual touches that had become more frequent over the past week, his hand on the small of my back when he passed behind my chair, his fingers brushing mine when he handed me coffee, the way he'd held me while I cried about Emma. I don't know how he sees it, I admitted. We don't talk about us. We talk about Sophia, about her development and needs. Everything else exists in this weird, unspoken space. Maybe it's time to change that. Have an actual conversation about what's happening here. And say what? That I'm using his daughter to fill the void left by mine? That I've developed feelings for a man I barely know who happens to control criminal operations? That the thought of leaving makes me physically ill? All of that, yes. Because he deserves honesty, and so do you. Camilla reached across the table, squeezing my free hand. You're allowed to want this, Alice. You're allowed to build something new even though Emma is gone. That doesn't make you a bad mother or disloyal to her memory. The words cracked something open inside me. A truth I'd been avoiding since I first held Sophia. I wasn't replacing Emma. I was learning to live in a world without her, finding purpose and connection in unexpected places. I'm scared, I whispered. Of course you are, but you're also one of the strongest people I know. Whatever happens with Franco and Sophia, you'll handle it. We talked for another hour, shifting to lighter topics, catching up on Camila's honeymoon plans and mutual friends I'd been neglecting. When Sophia fell asleep against my chest, milk-drunk and peaceful, Camilla smiled. She's lucky to have you, even if it's just for now. Walking back to the penthouse with Marco trailing behind, I thought about Camilla's advice. Maybe it was time to have that conversation with Franco, to clarify what we were doing and where this was heading. The uncertainty was becoming harder to navigate, the unspoken feelings making every interaction feel weighted with meaning neither of us dared acknowledge. Franco was waiting when I got back, pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. He looked tense, jaw clenched, shoulders rigid. When he saw us, some of the tension eased. I need to go, he said into the phone. Handle it the way we discussed. Call me if there are complications. He ended the call and crossed to me, eyes scanning Sophia as if checking for injuries. How was your coffee? Good. Camila sends her regards. I hesitated, then plunged forward before I could lose my nerve. Franco, we need to talk. About Sophia. About me being here. About what happens next. His expression shuddered. Walls going up so fast I could almost see them materializing. All right, let me put Sophia down for her nap, and we'll talk. He took his daughter carefully, cradling her with the confidence he'd developed over the past 3 weeks, and disappeared into the nursery. I waited in the living room, heart pounding, rehearsing different ways to approach the conversation. When Franco returned, he didn't sit down. Instead, he moved to the windows, looking out at the city spread below us. You want to leave, he said flatly. I want to understand what's happening here. What you expect from me long term. What I expect? He turned to face me, and the emotion in his eyes stole my breath. I expect that eventually you'll realize this was never just about Sophia. That every day you stay, I fall deeper into something I have no right to feel. I expect that you'll leave because that's what smart people do when they get too close to someone like me. The admission hung in the air between us, raw and honest and terrifying. What if I don't want to be smart? I heard myself say. Franco crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping just short of touching me. Then you'd be taking a risk that could destroy you. I'm not a good man, Alyssa. I do things that would horrify you if you knew the details. The only reason I'm trying to be better is because of Sophia, because of you. But that doesn't change what I am. I know what you are. I'm not naive about your world. Knowing and living it are different things. Then help me understand. Stop protecting me from the truth and just be honest about what you want. He reached up, cupping my face with hands that had probably done terrible things, but held me with infinite gentleness. I want you to stay. Not for 2 weeks or 2 months, but permanently. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're here, that Sophia has you, that I have you. But I can't ask that of you because it's not fair. Because you deserve someone normal who doesn't come with the baggage and danger that define my life. What if I think I can handle it? Then I'd spend every day terrified that I'd get you killed, that someone would use you against me, that you'd wake up one morning and realize what a mistake you'd made. I stepped closer, eliminating the distance between us. I'm not asking for guarantees, Franco. I'm asking if you want me here beyond my usefulness as Sophia's nurse. His answer came in the form of a kiss, desperate and hungry and full of weeks of restrained wanting. I kissed him back with equal intensity, pouring 3 weeks of unspoken feelings into the connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Franco pressed his forehead against mine. "Stay," he whispered. "Please stay." The word hung between us like a promise and a prayer. I nodded against his chest, feeling his arms tighten around me, and for the first time since Emma died, I let myself believe in the possibility of a future that included happiness. That night, after Sophia was asleep and the penthouse had settled into quiet, Franco and I talked until dawn. Really talked, about everything we'd been avoiding. He told me about Gabriella, about their arranged marriage that had grown into genuine affection, if not passionate love, about the guilt of being in a meeting when complications arose, about holding his newborn daughter for the first time while his wife lay dying 3 floors below. "I blame myself," he said, sitting beside me on the couch, our bodies close but not quite touching. Blamed Sophia too for a while. Every time I looked at her, I saw what I'd lost instead of what I'd gained. That's why I couldn't connect with her. Why I kept hiring nannies and hoping one of them would fix what was broken. You weren't broken. You were grieving. Maybe. But it took you walking into that wedding, taking my daughter without permission, and showing me what love actually looks like for me to understand that. His fingers found mine, intertwining naturally. You saved both of us, Alyssa. Not just Sophia. I shifted closer, resting my head on his shoulder. I'm terrified of this. Of you. Of what your world means. Of losing another person I care about. I can't promise you safety. My life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to protect you, to keep you and Sophia as far from the dangerous parts as possible. What about the Yamaguchi? You mentioned them before but never explained. Franco tensed slightly. They're a problem I'm handling. Territorial dispute over distribution channels. It'll be resolved soon. Franco. He sighed, recognizing my tone. They know about you now. Saw you with Sophia. Put together that you're important to me. That makes you a potential target, which is why I increased security. But I'm working on a resolution that doesn't involve violence. And if that doesn't work, then I do what's necessary to keep my family safe. His jaw clenched. I won't apologize for that. I'm not asking you to. I just need to understand what I'm walking into if I stay. We talked through the practical realities of my decision. I'd keep my practice but work primarily from the penthouse, seeing clients via video conference. Franco would set up a proper office space for me, soundproofed and private. Sophia would remain my priority during the day, but we'd hire a part-time assistant to help with her care as she got older and more active. What about us? I asked as the sun began to rise, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. What are we to each other? Franco turned to face me fully, his dark brown eyes serious. I want you to be mine. Not in the possessive, controlling way that your ex was, but in the way that means we're building something together, that we're partners in raising Sophia and figuring out this life. He paused. Is that what you want? Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I want. He kissed me then, slow and deep, sealing the promise we'd made to each other. When we finally pulled apart, Sophia's cry echoed from the nursery, announcing the start of a new day. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt sustainable, almost normal. Franco reduced his out-of-office meetings, conducting more business from home so he could be present for Sophia's milestones. She was developing rapidly now, the months of struggling suddenly giving way to steady progress. At nearly 8 months old, she could sit independently, was attempting to crawl, and had started babbling consonant sounds that occasionally resembled words. Was that Mama? Franco asked one morning, watching Sophia play on her mat. Could have been, or just ma sounds she's practicing. I sat beside him, coffee in hand. Either way, she's right on track developmentally now. Because of you. Because she finally feels secure. That's all she needed. I'd settled into my work routine as well, seeing 4 clients regularly via video and taking on 2 new ones who needed trauma-focused therapy. The office Franco had created for me was perfect, soundproofed and professionally outfitted with everything I needed. During sessions, Marco or one of the other security team members would stay with Sophia, giving me the privacy necessary for client confidentiality. Camilla visited weekly, bringing groceries and updates on the outside world I'd somewhat removed myself from. She'd softened her concerns about Franco once she saw us together. Saw the way he looked at me like I was something precious and fragile and strong all at once. "I still think this is insane," she said one afternoon while Sophia napped. "But you're happy. I can see it. That's what matters. I am happy. Happier than I thought I could be after Emma. Does it feel like you're replacing her?" The question would have hurt a month ago. Now I could answer honestly. No. It feels like I'm learning to live with her loss while still being open to love. Sophia isn't a replacement. She's her own person who I happen to care about deeply. And Franco? I trailed off, searching for words. Franco is the complicated, dangerous, surprisingly sweet man who somehow convinced my grief-stricken best friend to move into his criminal empire headquarters and play house. Camilla's expression was fond despite her words. "I'm happy for you, Alice." Genuinely. On a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after our conversation, Franco came home early from a meeting, tension radiating from him in waves. I was in the living room with Sophia, introducing her to soft foods, laughing as she made faces at the pureed sweet potato. "We need to talk," Franco said, his voice tight. I looked up, recognizing the tone. Something had happened. "Sophia's almost done eating. Give me 5 minutes." He nodded, disappearing into his office. I finished Sophia's meal quickly, wiped her face clean, and settled her in her playpen with toys before joining Franco. He stood by the windows, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders rigid. What happened? The Yamaguchi situation escalated. They made a move against one of my warehouses, took out 3 of my men. His voice was controlled, but fury simmered beneath. I have to respond. It'll mean being gone for a few days, handling things personally. Fear clutched at my chest. How dangerous is this? Dangerous enough that I need you and Sophia somewhere safe until it's over. I have a property upstate, heavily secured, completely off the grid. Marco will take you there tonight. Absolutely not. Franco turned, surprise flickering across his features. This isn't negotiable, Alyssa. If they're willing to hit my operations, they won't hesitate to target you. Then we stay together. All 3 of us go to this safe house, and you coordinate from there instead of the front lines. I can't do that. My men need to see me, need to know I'm willing to fight alongside them. Showing weakness now would be fatal to my position. I crossed to him, placing my hands on his chest. Then let's find a compromise. We go to the safe house. You handle what needs handling from there. But you come back to us every night. Don't shut me out of this part of your life just because it's ugly. His hands came up to cover mine. You don't understand what you're asking. When I'm in that mode, when I'm being the boss instead of Sophia's father, I'm not someone you want to be around. Let me decide that. I knew what you were when I agreed to stay, Franco. I can handle the reality of your world as long as you're honest with me about it. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. We leave in 2 hours. Pack whatever you and Sophia need for a week, maybe longer. This won't be resolved quickly. The drive took nearly 6 hours, long enough for Sophia to nap twice and for the city to disappear in the rearview mirror. The safe house turned out to be a sprawling compound in the Adirondacks, surrounded by dense forest and protected by guards I never saw but knew were there. The main house was rustic but comfortable, with stone fireplaces and heavy wooden furniture that somehow felt cozy rather than oppressive. Sophia took to the new environment immediately, fascinated by the trees visible through every window. Franco set up a command center in one of the downstairs rooms, coordinating operations via encrypted communications. I stayed mostly upstairs with Sophia, maintaining her routine as much as possible while anxiety gnawed at my stomach. At night, Franco would emerge from his meetings, covered in tension and exhaustion, and I'd hold him until some of the darkness lifted. 2 of the Yamaguchi lieutenants are willing to negotiate, he told me on the third night. If I can get their boss to the table, we might end this without a full-scale war. What happens if he won't negotiate? Franco's expression hardened. Then I make sure the next person in charge is more reasonable. The casual way he discussed violence should have disturbed me more than it did. Instead, I found myself accepting it as part of the package. The darkness that came with loving someone who operated outside normal society's rules. On the fifth night, Franco came upstairs with something different in his eyes. Not relief exactly, but resolution. It's over. They agreed to terms. We're dividing the territory differently, with clear boundaries that benefit both sides. And your men? The ones they killed? Their families are taken care of. Financially, emotionally, whatever they need. That's how this works. We protect our own, even in death. Sophia had started pulling herself to standing, using furniture as support. A major milestone that Franco witnessed for the first time that week. Watching him crouch beside her, encouraging her with soft words in Italian. I saw the man he could be when the weight of his position wasn't crushing him. Brava, principessa, he murmured, as Sophia stood shakily, gripping the coffee table. You're so strong, just like your mama. The words caught me off guard. He'd never called me that before. Never assigned me that role despite the reality of our situation. I felt tears prick my eyes as Sophia looked at me and smiled, proud of her accomplishment. Did you see? I asked, moving closer. You're standing all by yourself. Sophia wobbled, then plopped down on her bottom, laughing at the sudden change in perspective. Franco scooped her up, spinning her gently, his face transformed by genuine joy. She's going to be walking soon, he said. Running before we know it, getting into everything. Are you ready for that? With you here? I think I can handle anything. We returned to the penthouse the following week. The threat neutralized, but the reality of Franco's world now impossible to ignore. I'd seen the toll his position took, the way violence and danger shaped every decision. But I'd also seen his devotion to Sophia, his determination to be better than his circumstances, his capacity for tenderness despite a life built on ruthlessness. One evening, after putting Sophia to bed, I found myself standing in the nursery doorway, watching her sleep. Franco appeared beside me, slipping an arm around my waist. She looks like Gabriella when she sleeps, he said quietly, but she has your expressions, your gentleness. She has your strength, your determination not to let anything break her. We're good for her. Together. He pulled me closer. I never thought I'd have this again. A family. Someone to share the weight with. You gave me that, Alyssa. I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd somehow become my everything. You gave me a reason to keep going when I thought I was done. We saved each other, Franco. He kissed me, and in that moment, I knew without question that I'd made the right choice. This life, this man, this child, they were mine now. Not because circumstances had forced us together, but because we'd chosen each other despite every reason not to. Sophia stirred in her crib, making sleepy sounds. I moved to her automatically, stroking her back until she settled. When I turned, Franco was watching us with an expression that made my heart clench. What are you thinking? I asked. That I want to make this permanent. Not just you living here, but us being a real family. He paused. I'm not proposing. Not yet. But I wanted you to know that's where this is heading for me. Eventually, when you're ready. The promise settled warm in my chest. I think I might be ready sooner than you think. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The screen showed Camilla's name, and a time that made my stomach drop. 3:17 in the morning. Nothing good ever came from calls at this hour. Hello, I answered, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Franco beside me. Alyssa, I'm so sorry to call this late, but I got an email from someone claiming they know about your situation with Franco. They attached photos of you and Sophia. Camilla's voice was tight with worry. They're threatening to send everything to the police, to Child Protective Services unless you leave within 24 hours. As a therapist, I knew Child Protective Services wouldn't remove a child based on a few out-of-context photos. But investigations had their own gravity. Once they started, you couldn't predict how far they would go, or who might be willing to twist a narrative. Ice flooded my veins. I slipped out of bed, padding into the hallway before responding. What kind of photos? You nursing Sophia. You and Franco together. The penthouse, the safe house upstate. They've been watching you for weeks, maybe longer. My hands started shaking. Did they say who they are or what they want? Just that you're in danger, that Franco is using you, that you need to get out before it's too late. But Alice, the tone felt wrong, like they're trying to manipulate you rather than genuinely warn you. I leaned against the wall, forcing myself to breathe through the panic. Send me the email. Everything they included. I need to show Franco. Are you sure that's safe? What if he thinks you're involved somehow? He won't. But I need him to see this, to know what we're dealing with. After Camilla sent the files, I stood in the dark hallway, scrolling through images that cataloged my life for the past month. Me walking Sophia in the park, Franco and me at the safe house. Intimate moments that should have been private. The invasion felt visceral, like someone had been living in our home without permission. I found Franco awake when I returned, sitting up in bed with his phone in hand. Vincent just called. Someone leaked photos of you and Sophia to a rival organization. They're using them as leverage. The Yamaguchi? No. Someone new, or someone pretending to be new. Vincent's investigating, but we need to assume they're serious about whatever they're planning. His eyes found mine in the dim light. You got a call too. I heard your phone. I showed him the email Camilla had forwarded. He read through it methodically, his expression growing darker with each line. When he finished, he set the phone down with careful control. This is my fault. I should have anticipated someone would try this. Should have protected you better. Franco, you can't control everything. I can control whether the woman I love and my daughter are safe from people trying to use them against me. He stood, pacing to the window. I need you and Sophia somewhere completely secure. Not the safe house. They clearly know about that. Somewhere off the grid where I can coordinate a response without worrying about your safety. We already did this. We agreed I wouldn't be shut out of the difficult parts. That was before someone threatened to destroy your life, to take Sophia away through false accusations to child services. He turned to face me. These people aren't bluffing, Alyssa. They'll manufacture evidence, bribe officials, do whatever it takes to hurt me through you. I crossed to him, placing my hands on his chest. Then we handle it together. You teach me what I need to know to protect myself. We increase security. We do whatever's necessary. But I'm not running. You're being stubborn. I'm being realistic. If I leave now, they win. They prove that threatening me is an effective way to control you. Is that really what you want? His jaw clenched, muscles working as he processed my argument. Finally, he pulled me into his arms, holding tight. I can't lose you. Either of you. The thought of something happening because I brought you into this world. It's unbearable. Then don't lose us. Fight for us. But let me fight beside you instead of locked away somewhere safe. The next morning, Franco called a meeting with his senior people. I sat in his office while 5 men I'd only seen in passing gathered around the conference table. Marco was there, along with Vincent, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who handled intelligence, and 3 others whose names I hadn't learned yet. The photographs are a problem, Vincent said, laying printed copies on the table. They show intimate family moments, which means whoever took them had sustained access to your daily movements. That level of surveillance requires resources and patience. Any leads on who's behind it? Franco asked. The email routed through multiple proxies, but the language suggests someone with legal knowledge. Phrases like improper relationship and endangerment of a minor are calculated to trigger specific responses from authorities. Vincent pulled up more information on his laptop. I'm checking connections to family law attorneys, social workers who might have been compromised. Anyone with access to those systems. What about the timing? I asked, surprising myself by speaking. All eyes turned to me. Why now? We've been together for over a month. Why wait to make their move? Franco looked at me with something like pride. She's right. This isn't random. Something changed recently that made us vulnerable. Marco leaned forward. The Yamaguchi resolution. When you negotiated territory instead of going to war, you showed restraint. Some might see that as weakness. Or someone within the family disagreed with the decision, Vincent added. Thought you were getting soft because of personal attachments. The implication hung heavy in the room. Someone Franco trusted might be working against him, using me and Sophia as leverage to undermine his authority. I want backgrounds run on everyone who had access to our movements in the past month, Franco ordered. Staff, security, associates who knew about the safe house. Someone's feeding information out, and I want to know who. The meeting continued for another hour. Strategies discussed in language I only partially understood. When the men finally left, Franco stayed at his desk, reviewing files Vincent had compiled. You should rest, I said from the doorway. Sophia will be up soon for her morning feeding. I keep thinking about what you said, about the timing. He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion evident. There's a dinner next week. Annual thing where the major families meet to discuss territories and disputes. I'm expected to attend, to show strength after the Yamaguchi situation. So attend. Not alone. Traditionally, bosses bring their wives, their families. It's a show of solidarity, of normalcy within our world. He paused. I want you there with me. As my partner, not hidden away like a secret. The request took me by surprise. Franco, I don't know anything about navigating that kind of event. I'd be a liability. You'd be exactly what I need. Someone genuine in a room full of performance and calculation. He stood, crossing to me. But I won't lie about the risks. Showing up with you makes our relationship public knowledge in circles where that information can be weaponized. As opposed to now, when clearly someone already knows and is using it against us. Fair point. I thought about the photos, the threats, the reality that hiding hadn't actually protected me. What would I need to know? What are the rules for something like this? Over the next few days, Franco prepared me for the dinner with an intensity that would have been amusing if the stakes weren't so high. He explained the hierarchy, who held real power versus who just made noise, which families were allies and which merely tolerated each other's existence. The Costello family runs most of the eastern seaboard ports. Their boss, Vincent Costello, is reasonable but territorial. Don't mention shipping or distribution in his presence unless you want a lecture. The Giordano's control Atlantic City and parts of Philadelphia. Maria Giordano is the real power there, though her husband Anthony pretends to be in charge. Address her directly if they approach. She'll respect that more than deferring to him. And whatever you do, don't engage with Roberto Santini. He's old school, thinks women have no place in our world beyond decoration. He'll try to provoke you, make you react emotionally. Don't give him the satisfaction. I absorbed the information, making notes, feeling increasingly like I was studying for an exam where failure meant more than a bad grade. I agreed to every security condition Marco laid out. The seating arrangement, the exit routes, the quiet signal that meant I left the room the second things shifted. Camilla came over to help me choose an appropriate outfit, settling on a deep burgundy dress that was elegant without being too revealing. You look like you belong in a crime drama, she said, adjusting the neckline. In the best way possible. I feel like I'm about to walk into a lion's den wearing a meat suit. You've survived everything thrown at you so far. You'll survive this too. She hugged me tightly. But text me the minute you get home. I'll be up waiting. The night of the dinner, I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing myself. The dress fit perfectly. My hair was styled in soft waves, and the diamond earrings Franco had given me that morning sparkled under the lights. I looked expensive, polished, like someone who belonged in his world. Franco appeared behind me, devastating in a dark suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and commanding presence. You're beautiful, he said quietly, but more importantly, you're strong. Remember that tonight. Sophia was with Marco and a trusted nanny, surrounded by security at the penthouse. Leaving her felt wrong, but Franco had insisted this event was no place for a child. I kissed her goodbye 3 times, made Marco promise to call if anything seemed off, and forced myself to walk out the door. The venue was an exclusive restaurant that had been closed to the public for the evening. Every table occupied by dangerous people pretending to be civilized. Franco kept me close as we entered, his hand on the small of my back, radiating protective authority. Conversations paused when we appeared. I felt eyes assessing, cataloging, judging. Some faces showed surprise, others calculation, a few outright hostility. Franco navigated the room with practiced ease, introducing me to allies and rivals alike with the same calm confidence. This is Alyssa Turner. She's family, not girlfriend, not companion, but family. The distinction mattered in this world, marked me as someone under his protection, rather than just another temporary attachment. Maria Giordano approached early, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Franco. It's been too long. And this must be the woman everyone's been whispering about. Maria, always a pleasure. Yes, this is Alyssa. Child psychologist, I heard. Quite different from Gabriella. Her tone wasn't unkind, just observational. How are you finding our world? Complicated, I answered honestly. But worth navigating for the right reasons. Something shifted in Maria's expression. Approval replacing curiosity. Honest answer. I appreciate that. Most people in this room wouldn't know honesty if it introduced itself personally. She glanced at Franco. You chose well. Hold on to her. I intend to. The dinner itself was elaborate. Course after course of expensive food I barely tasted due to nerves. Conversation flowed around me. Business discussed in careful euphemisms that probably meant something entirely different than the surface words suggested. Franco participated when necessary, but spent most of his attention monitoring the room, watching for threats I wouldn't recognize until too late. Roberto Santini made his move during dessert. He approached our table with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, settling into the empty chair beside me without invitation. So you're the one who's tamed our Franco. Quite an accomplishment. I haven't tamed anyone, I replied evenly. We're building something together. How modern. Tell me, do you understand what you've gotten yourself into? The kind of life this entails? Franco's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. A reminder to stay calm, that this was exactly what he'd warned me about. I understand that every relationship requires navigating challenges. This one just happens to come with unique complications. Unique complications, Santini repeated, laughing. That's one way to describe it. Another would be constant danger, moral compromises, the knowledge that any day could bring violence to your doorstep. Roberto, Franco's voice cut through with quiet authority, this isn't the time or place. I'm simply ensuring the young lady knows what she signed up for. We've seen too many outsiders think they can handle this life, only to crumble when reality hits. His eyes found mine again. How's your daughter, by the way? Sophia, isn't it? Growing fast, I hear. The implied threat was unmistakable. Franco's entire body tensed beside me, violence hovering just beneath his controlled surface. I squeezed his hand back, a signal to let me handle this. Sophia is thriving. Thank you for asking. It's amazing what proper care and attention can do for a child who's been struggling. I met Santini's gaze directly. I imagine you understand the importance of protecting what matters most, even when others try to use it against you. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw calculation in his eyes. Then he smiled again, standing smoothly. Indeed. Enjoy the rest of your evening. After he walked away, Franco exhaled slowly. That was either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. But I wasn't going to let him intimidate me using Sophia. He knows about the photos. That wasn't random curiosity. That was a confirmation that he's somehow involved. The realization settled heavy between us. One of the most powerful men in the New England criminal landscape had just revealed himself as a threat to our family, and we were sitting in a room full of witnesses who would do nothing to help. The rest of the evening passed in tense awareness. Every conversation now filtered through the knowledge that Santini was moving against us. When we finally left, exhaustion and adrenaline warred within me. In the car, Franco made a call. Vincent, it's Santini. I need everything we have on his recent activities, anyone he's been meeting with, any vulnerabilities we can exploit. By tomorrow morning. He hung up and pulled me against him. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have been exposed to that. I chose this, remember? All of it, including nights like tonight. Still, knowing you're in danger because of me, it's worse than any threat to myself. When we arrived home, Sophia was asleep, but I needed to see her anyway, to reassure myself she was safe. Franco stood in the nursery doorway while I watched her breathe. This innocent child caught up in a world she didn't choose. We'll handle Santini, Franco said quietly. He made a mistake tonight. showing his hand too early. That gives us an advantage. What kind of advantage? The kind where we make sure he regrets ever threatening what's mine. The darkness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it felt like protection. Like someone finally willing to stand between me and the monsters trying to tear apart the life we'd built. I just hoped we could survive what came next. The confrontation with Santini triggered a cascade of consequences I hadn't anticipated. Within 48 hours of the dinner, Vincent had compiled a dossier that painted a disturbing picture. Santini wasn't just trying to undermine Franco's authority. He was positioning himself to take over Boston territory entirely, using me and Sophia as the opening move. He's been building alliances, Vincent explained, spreading documents across Franco's desk. 3 smaller families who think you've gone soft. The photos were meant to prove you're distracted. That family has made you vulnerable. How many people are we talking about? I asked from my seat near the window. Franco had insisted I be present for these briefings now, said I deserved to know what we were facing. Santini, plus maybe 20 loyalists across the 3 families. Not a small force, but manageable if we act strategically. Vincent glanced at Franco. The question is how you want to handle this. Direct confrontation or quiet elimination? Neither. Franco's answer surprised both of us. I want him exposed. If I take him out violently, the others will see it as proof I'm the problem. But if I show everyone exactly what he's been doing, the manipulation, the betrayal of our agreements, then they'll turn on him themselves. That's risky, Vincent warned. Requires gathering evidence that could also implicate you. Then we're careful about what we share and how. I won't start a war that puts Alyssa and Sophia in more danger than necessary. Watching Franco navigate the politics of his world with this new restraint was fascinating. The man who'd resolved the Yamaguchi situation through negotiation was evolving, choosing calculated moves over immediate violence. I wanted to believe it was my influence, that caring for us had fundamentally changed him. But part of me wondered if this was just another strategy, pragmatism disguised as growth. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Franco found me in the office I'd been using for client sessions. I was reviewing notes from earlier therapy appointments, trying to maintain some semblance of my professional life amidst the chaos. You're quiet, he observed, leaning against the doorframe. What's going through your head? Honestly, I'm trying to reconcile the man who makes me breakfast and reads bedtime stories with the one who discusses eliminating threats like it's a business transaction. He crossed the room, pulling up a chair to sit facing me. They're the same person, Alyssa. I wish I could separate them for you, be only the good parts when I'm here. But that's not reality. I know. And I'm not asking you to change who you are. I just need to understand how to exist in both versions of your life without losing myself in the process. Then tell me what you need. Boundaries, limits, whatever helps you maintain the parts of yourself that matter. The offer was genuine. I could see it in his eyes. I need my work to stay separate. My clients, their stories, the therapeutic relationship, that can't be contaminated by your world. Agreed. What else? I need Sophia protected from the details until she's old enough to understand and choose for herself what role she wants in the family business. She'll never be in the business, Franco said firmly. That's not negotiable. Whatever I build, it's so she can have choices I never did. And I need us to have conversations like this regularly, not just crisis management, but actually checking in about how we're both handling things. He nodded slowly, processing each request. I can do all of that. But I need something from you, too. What? Stop questioning whether you belong here. You've proven yourself a dozen times over. The way you handled Santini at the dinner, how you've adapted to security protocols, your willingness to understand my world instead of demanding I abandon it. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. The words settled warm in my chest. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear them, needed confirmation that I wasn't just tolerated, but genuinely valued. I'll try, I promised, but you have to be patient with me when I struggle. This isn't the life I imagined, and sometimes I need time to process. I can be patient. The next morning, I woke to Sophia's babbling from the nursery. At 9 months old, she was becoming increasingly vocal, stringing together consonant sounds that occasionally resembled words. I found her standing in her crib, gripping the railing, bouncing excitedly when she saw me. "Good morning, sweet girl. Ready for breakfast?" As I settled into the glider with her, my phone buzzed with a text from Camilla. "Coffee today? I need to talk to you about something." We arranged to meet at the same cafe as before, with Marco maintaining his usual discreet distance. When I arrived, Camilla looked worried, her usual bright energy replaced with tension. "What's wrong?" I asked after ordering. "I got another email. Different from the first one, but clearly from someone connected to that situation." She pulled up her phone, showing me a message that made my blood run cold. "Tell your friend she's making a mistake. Franco Ricchetti is using her grief to manipulate her into staying. She needs to leave before she becomes another casualty of his lifestyle. This is her last warning." "When did you get this?" "This morning. Alice, I'm really worried. What if they're right? What if he is manipulating you?" I looked at Sophia, contentedly nursing, then back at my best friend. "Franco isn't perfect. He's dangerous, operates outside the law, makes decisions I don't always agree with. But he's not manipulating me. He's been honest about what his life entails, given me choices at every step, even the choice to leave, especially that one. He's said multiple times that I can walk away, that he'll make sure Sophia and I are both taken care of even if we're not together." I paused, choosing my words carefully. The person sending these messages wants me to doubt him, wants to create division between us. That's manipulation, Camilla. Not what Franco and I have built. She studied my face for a long moment. "You're sure about this? About him? As sure as I can be about anything. I'm not naive. I know the risks. But I also know what I feel when I'm with him. How he treats me. How he's trying to be better. That's real, regardless of what outsiders think they know." "Okay. I trust your judgment, but promise me if that changes. If you ever feel trapped or scared, you'll tell me." "I promise." That afternoon, Vincent called an emergency meeting. He'd found the leak, the person feeding information to Santini about our movements and activities. When we gathered in Franco's office, Marco stood beside a younger man I recognized as part of the security rotation. The man's face was bruised, one eye swelling shut. "This is Thomas," Vincent said flatly. "He's been taking photos, reporting our schedules, basically acting as Santini's eyes for the past 6 weeks. Franco's expression was cold, controlled fury barely contained. "Why?" Thomas spat blood onto the floor. "Because you've gone soft. Choosing negotiation over strength, letting some woman dictate how you run the family. You're making us weak. So you betrayed your oath, endangered innocent people, for what? Santini's promise of a better position?" Franco's voice was deadly quiet. "Did you even stop to think about what happens when I find out?" "Which I always do. Do what you're going to do. I'm not apologizing for trying to protect the family's interests. I should have left the room. This wasn't my world. Wasn't the conversation I needed to be part of. But Franco had asked me to stay. Said I should see what consequences looked like in his reality. Here's what's going to happen," Franco said, addressing Thomas but speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're going to call Santini and tell him you've been compromised, that I know everything. Then you're going to disappear, leave Boston, and never come back. Because if I see you again, the next conversation won't be this civilized." Thomas stared, clearly expecting worse. "That's it? You're just letting me go? I'm giving you a chance to survive, which is more than you deserve. But understand this. You're marked now. Every family in New England will know you're a traitor. That's a death sentence with or without my direct involvement." Marco escorted Thomas out while the rest of us sat in heavy silence. When they were gone, Franco turned to me. "You're wondering why I didn't kill him. The old Franco probably would have. The old Franco didn't have a daughter watching his every move, learning from his example, or a partner who's trying to see the good in him despite overwhelming evidence of the bad." He stood, moving to the window. "I meant what I said about being better. That starts with choosing consequences that don't involve unnecessary violence. Even when he endangered us? Even then. Because if I become the monster everyone expects, I prove Santini right, that I'm too compromised by personal attachments to lead effectively." Vincent cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Thomas talking to Santini will speed things up, force him to make a move before he's ready. That's our advantage. The next 3 days were tense with waiting. Franco increased security further, brought in additional personnel to watch the penthouse and monitor Sophia's every movement. I tried to maintain normalcy, conducting therapy sessions and caring for Sophia, but fear hummed constant beneath the surface. On the 4th day, Vincent got the call he'd been expecting. Santini wanted a meeting, neutral territory, to discuss terms. Franco agreed, with conditions that I insisted on being present for the negotiation. Absolutely not, Franco said immediately. That puts you directly in his crosshairs. I'm already in his crosshairs, but if I'm there, he can't twist your words or claim you acted without reason. I'm a witness, and an outsider to your world. That matters. We argued for hours. Franco adamant about my safety, me equally determined not to be sidelined. Finally, he agreed to a compromise. I could attend the first part of the meeting, the formal discussion where terms were laid out, but I'd leave before any final decisions were made, before the conversation could turn violent. The meeting was set for the following evening at a restaurant owned by a neutral family, the Costellos, who had no stake in the outcome. I dressed carefully, professional but not intimidated, and tried to calm the racing of my heart as we drove through Boston. Franco held my hand the entire way, his grip tight enough to border on painful. If anything feels wrong, if he makes any move toward you, I need you to trust Marco to get you out. Don't argue. Don't hesitate. Just go. I will. The restaurant had been cleared of regular patrons, only key players present. Santini sat at the head of a long table, flanked by his associates, looking every bit the aging patriarch he fashioned himself to be. His eyes tracked me as I entered, a calculating assessment that made my skin crawl. Miss Turner, how unexpected to see you here. His tone was polite, but menace lurked beneath. I would have thought Franco would keep you safely tucked away. I wanted to be here, I said, taking the seat Franco pulled out for me, to understand exactly what's being discussed and why. How very modern. Gabriella would never have involved herself in business matters. Then it's fortunate I'm not Gabriella. Santini's smile sharpened. Indeed. Let's get to the point, shall we? Franco, you've become a liability. Your decision-making is compromised by personal attachments, as evidenced by bringing her to this meeting. I'm offering you a chance to step back gracefully, retain some territory and dignity, rather than forcing a conflict neither of us truly wants. That's generous, Franco said, his voice dripping sarcasm. Except I'm not interested in stepping back. You've been undermining my authority for months, using manipulation and deception to turn allies against me. That ends tonight. Or what? You'll start a war you can't win? Or I'll show everyone here exactly what you've been doing. Franco nodded to Vincent, who produced the dossier they'd compiled. Photos of your meetings with the Yamaguchi before our negotiation, trying to sabotage the peace. Recordings of you offering reduced rates to my distributors if they'd switch loyalty. Evidence that you orchestrated the threats against Alyssa, including hiring Thomas to spy on us. Santini's composure cracked slightly. That's all circumstantial. Could be fabricated. Could be. But it's not. And you know it. Franco leaned forward. Here's my offer. You retire. Publicly cite health reasons, pass your territory to someone reasonable, and I don't share any of this with the families who trusted you. You get to keep your reputation and your life. That's more than you've earned. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for Santini's response. His face cycled through emotions, fury and calculation and finally resignation. He'd been outmaneuvered, and we all knew it. You've learned some new tricks, he said finally, using shame instead of bullets. Very progressive. I'm trying to build something that lasts beyond my generation. That requires different strategies than what worked in the past. Santini stood slowly, age evident in his movements. Fine. I'll announce my retirement next week. But understand, Franco, you've set a dangerous precedent. Showing mercy makes others think you're weak. Let them think what they want. I know what I am. After Santini and his people left, the tension in the room released like a popped balloon. Vincent clapped Franco on the shoulder. Other associates offered congratulations, and I allowed myself to finally breathe. We'd survived. Not through violence, not through the brutal tactics that defined this world, but through strategy and evidence, and Franco's determination to be something more than what was expected. By the end of the week, Santini had tendered a very public retirement, the kind that came with quiet pressure, airtight evidence, and no room for negotiation. On the drive home, Franco pulled me close, kissing my temple. "Thank you for being there, for being my witness. Always," I promised, meaning it more than I'd meant anything in my life. 2 months after the confrontation with Santini, I stood in the nursery watching Sophia take wobbly steps between furniture. At 11 months old, she was determined to walk independently, pulling herself up on everything within reach, and launching herself toward the next handhold with fearless abandon. "She's going to give me a heart attack," Franco said from the doorway. He'd come home early from meetings, something he'd been doing more frequently since the Santini situation resolved. "She's just confident. That's a good thing. Confident is one word for it. Reckless might be another." But his voice was warm, full of pride for his daughter's development. Sophia spotted him and squealed, releasing her grip on the toy chest to stumble toward him. Franco caught her before she fell, swinging her up into his arms. "You're getting so big, Principessa. Soon you won't need me at all." "She'll always need you," I said, moving closer. "We both will." He looked at me over Sophia's head, his expression serious. "Can we talk? After she's down for her nap?" The tone made my stomach clench with anxiety, but I nodded. We went through Sophia's usual routine together, changing her diaper, reading 2 board books, and settling her in the crib with her favorite stuffed animal. She fought sleep for a few minutes, babbling protests, then finally surrendered. In the living room, Franco paced near the windows, his usual confident posture replaced with something more uncertain. I sat on the couch, waiting, heart pounding. "I've been thinking about what we're doing here," he began. "About how you've been living in my home, caring for my daughter, building a life with me, but without any real security or commitment on my part. Franco, I don't need—" "Let me finish." He stopped pacing, turning to face me fully. "When I asked you to stay months ago, it was supposed to be temporary. 2 weeks to help Sophia, that's all. But it became so much more, and I never adjusted the terms to reflect that reality. I'm not looking for a contract. I know, but you deserve one anyway." He crossed to where I sat, kneeling in front of me so we were eye level. "I've done this backwards, Alyssa. Let you move in, brought you into my world, made you part of our family, without ever properly asking if that's what you wanted long term. I'm here, aren't I? That's my answer, but I need to do this right." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my breath caught. "I'm not going to make the same mistakes I made before. This isn't about securing your position or protecting my assets. This is about choosing you every day, for the rest of my life." He opened the box to reveal a ring, elegant and understated, a single diamond set in platinum. "Marry me, Alyssa. Not because it makes sense, not because of Sophia, but because I love you and can't imagine building a future without you." Tears blurred my vision. "This is the worst proposal." I managed through the tightness in my throat. "You're kneeling in front of the woman who's been living with you for months, asking if she wants to make official what we've already been doing. Is that a no?" "It's a yes, you ridiculous man." "Of course it's a yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into a kiss that felt like coming home. When we broke apart, both slightly breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I was terrified you'd say no, that you'd realize you could do better than a man who operates outside the law and comes with more baggage than anyone should have to handle. I stopped looking for better the night I held Sophia at that wedding. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." We sat together on the couch, my hand in his, both of us processing the shift from living together to actively planning a future. It felt significant in ways I couldn't quite articulate, like we'd crossed an invisible line that changed everything and nothing simultaneously. "When did you buy the ring?" I asked, examining it in the light. 3 weeks ago. I've been carrying it around, trying to find the right moment. Then I realized there is no right moment, just the decision to stop waiting and ask. 3 weeks? You were planning this while dealing with Santini? Especially while dealing with Santini. Watching you handle that situation, Seeing your strength and commitment despite the danger, it clarified what I wanted. I needed you to know you're not just convenient or useful, you're essential. The words settled warm in my chest, filling spaces I hadn't realized were empty. We talked for hours about practical details. When to get married, whether to have a big ceremony or something small, how to tell Sophia when she was old enough to understand. I want Camilla there, I said firmly, and your brother, if he's willing to come. Small gathering, just people who matter. Whatever you want. This is your day as much as mine. Our day, I corrected. Everything about this is ours now, not yours or mine, but shared. He nodded, accepting the distinction. I'll need to make some arrangements. Ensure everyone understands that you're family now, that threatening you means declaring war on the entire organization. That sounds ominous. It's practical. In my world, marriage isn't just a personal commitment. It's a political statement, a declaration of allegiance and protection. People need to know where you stand. I thought about the dinner, about Santini, and the delicate political balance Franco maintained. Will there be objections? People who think I'm not suitable? Probably. Roberto certainly will, though his opinion doesn't carry weight anymore. Some of the older generation will disapprove of you not being Italian, not having family connections. He squeezed my hand. But I don't care what they think. You're who I choose. And anyone who has a problem with that can find another organization to work with. The absolute certainty in his voice made me believe him. This wasn't just words. It was a promise backed by the full weight of his position and power. That evening, I called Camilla to share the news. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Oh my God, Alice, I'm so happy for you. When? Where? What can I do? Next month. Small ceremony here at the penthouse. And I need you to be my maid of honor, obviously. Obviously. I'm already planning the bachelorette party. Wait, do Mafia girlfriends have bachelorette parties? Is that a thing? I have no idea, but we're going to find out. We talked for over an hour, Camilla asking 1,000 questions about details I hadn't even considered yet. Dress shopping, flowers, catering, all the elements of a wedding I'd thought I'd never have after losing Emma. Are you scared? She asked as our conversation wound down, terrified, but also more certain about this than I've been about anything in a long time. That's how you know it's right, when the fear doesn't outweigh the certainty. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Franco's brother Antonio arrived from New York, initially skeptical of the rapid timeline, but warming up after meeting me and seeing Franco with Sophia. I've never seen him like this, Antonio told me privately. Happy, I mean. Actually happy instead of just going through the motions. He's a good father, a good partner. I'm lucky to have found him. We're the ones who are lucky. You brought him back from a dark place none of us could reach. The wedding itself was intimate, held on a Saturday afternoon with fewer than 20 guests. Camilla stood at my side as maid of honor, eyes already shiny with unshed tears. Anthony's hand resting at the small of her back as if he were anchoring them both. I wore a simple ivory dress that Camilla had helped me choose. Nothing elaborate, just elegant and comfortable. Sophia served as flower girl, toddling down the makeshift aisle in a miniature dress that matched mine, dropping rose petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Franco stood waiting at the window overlooking the city, his dark suit perfectly tailored, his eyes tracking my approach with an intensity that made my breath catch. When I reached him, he took my hands, and I felt the slight tremor in his fingers. Nervous? I whispered. Terrified I'm going to wake up and realize this is a dream. The officiant, a judge Franco knew from legitimate business dealings, kept the ceremony brief. We'd written our own vows, refusing to use generic promises that didn't capture what we were actually committing to. I can't promise you safety, Franco said when it was his turn. I can't promise that my world won't sometimes intrude on the life we're building, but I can promise that I'll fight for you every single day, that I'll choose you over power, over legacy, over everything that used to define me. You and Sophia are my family now, and I'll protect that with everything I have. My turn. I can't promise I'll always understand your decisions. I can't promise I won't be scared sometimes of what your life entails, but I can promise that I'll stand beside you anyway. That I'll trust you've done the math on what's necessary versus what's gratuitous. That I'll build a home with you that's worth protecting, that gives Sophia a foundation strong enough to withstand whatever comes next. When the judge pronounced us married, Franco kissed me with such tenderness that several guests made appreciative sounds. Sophia, held by Marco, clapped her hands and shouted what might have been, "Mama," her newest word that she applied liberally to everything from me to her stuffed animals. The reception was casual, catered food and champagne, conversation and laughter that felt remarkably normal despite the nature of most guests' professions. Maria Giordano attended, offering congratulations and a warning disguised as advice. "Marriage in our world requires flexibility," she told me quietly. "There will be nights he comes home covered in someone else's blood. Weeks where you can't reach him because he's handling situations that would destroy most people. The trick is remembering why you chose him when those moments test your resolve. How do you handle it? By building a life rich enough that his absence doesn't leave me empty. Work, friends, hobbies, purpose beyond just being his wife. You already have that with your practice. Hold on to it." As the afternoon faded to evening and guests began leaving, Franco and I stood together watching Sophia play with ribbons from the presents, completely absorbed in her simple game. "This is what I wanted to give her," Franco said quietly. "A mother who loves her, stability, normalcy despite everything else. She's going to have that. We'll make sure of it. And maybe," he continued, his hand settling on my waist, "eventually a sibling. If you want that, if you're ready." The suggestion caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on surviving each day, on learning to be Sophia's mother and Franco's partner, that I hadn't let myself think about the possibility of another child, about willingly stepping into pregnancy again after the trauma of losing Emma. "I might want that," I admitted. "Someday, when the fear doesn't outweigh everything else. No pressure. Just wanted you to know I'd welcome it when you're ready." That night, after Sophia was asleep and the penthouse had been restored to its usual pristine state, Franco and I stood in our bedroom, this space now officially shared rather than just practically inhabited. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Being married to a criminal? Surprisingly normal. How does it feel being married to someone who spent years studying how to help traumatized children? Like I've been given something I don't deserve, but will spend the rest of my life trying to earn." I crossed to him, wrapping my arms around his waist. "You've already earned it, Franco. By showing up every day, by choosing to be better than what your world demands, by loving Sophia and me, despite how much easier your life would be without the complications we bring. My life was empty before you. Easy maybe, but completely empty. We made love that night, with a new quality to the intimacy, the knowledge that we'd promised forever adding weight to every touch, every whispered word." Afterward, lying in the dark with Franco's arms around me, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the chapel where Sophia's cries had called to something broken in me, to this moment where I'd built a family from grief and unexpected connection. It wasn't the life I'd planned, wasn't the future I'd imagined when I first met Franco at Camilla's wedding, but it was mine, ours. A family forged from loss and love and the determination to build something beautiful despite the darkness surrounding us. Sophia's voice echoed from the nursery through the baby monitor, not crying but babbling to herself, practicing sounds that would eventually become words and sentences and her own story to tell. Franco stirred beside me. "I'll get her. We'll both go." Together we walked down the hall to where our daughter was standing in her crib, holding onto the railing, waiting for us with that bright smile that never failed to make my heart constrict. Franco lifted her out while I settled into the glider, and we spent the early morning hours as a family, watching the city wake up through the windows while Sophia nursed and then fell back asleep against my chest. This was what I'd fought for, what had made every risk worth taking. Not perfection, but presence. Not safety, but commitment. A family built deliberately, with full knowledge of what it would cost, and absolute certainty that the price was worth paying. Franco's hand found mine in the dim light, fingers intertwining with the ease of practice. No words needed, just the solid presence of partnership, the quiet promise of showing up tomorrow and every day after, ready to face whatever came next together. The end.